Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next talk, Animal-Free Science, Better Science Without Animal Testing. And I want to quickly introduce our speaker, Jen Hochmuth. Jen is a marine biologist as well as environmental toxicologist, and she's currently working for the organization Animal Rights Belgium as their coordinator for the Replace Animal Testing and the Animal-Free Science campaigns. In our presentation today, Jen will talk about animal-free science and describe the currently available alternatives to animal testing and demonstrate how scientific progress can be accelerated without the cruelty of animal testing. Welcome, Jen, and have a nice talk.
Thank you very much, Alexa. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, all is it online, to talk to you about animal testing and why we're so much better off moving over to alternatives to animal-free science. So thank you for the introduction. I'm just going to give a brief overview of our organization, Animal Rights, what we do and how my campaign fits into our general purpose of our organization. So for Animal Rights, our main motivation is that each animal is an individual and has a right to a life and well-being. So we advocate for the rights of all animals and the cessation of abuse and their exploitation. We do this with 4 primary campaigns. As you can see in the 4 colored boxes, we have Stop the Slaughter, End All Hunting, Ban the Fur Trade, and Replace Animal Testing. So I work for the campaign to Replace Animal Testing, where we expose cruelty to laboratory animals. We've recently started another campaign, which is called Animal Free Science, which you can sort of visualize as the positive answer or the solutions to the issue of animal testing. So there is a solution and it's animal-free science. Similar, we also have another campaign on the left-hand side, it's called Plant Power, which is where we offer solutions against, for the slaughtering of animals, going vegan, Plant Power. So you can visualize it a little bit as a mirror image of the two. So let's dig in. Unfortunately, animal testing is currently still seen as the gold standard to predict human responses. And most people are morally against animal testing, but they will believe it's what is referred to as a necessary evil. As you can see in the graph on the left-hand side, this was a survey that was conducted in 2020, in March this year, where actually 75% of the people who were asked accept the idea that animals should be used for scientific research as long as there's no unnecessary suffering and there is no alternative to animal testing. So people don't want animals to suffer and they believe that there is no other alternative. So it's a necessary evil. But yeah, is this really the case? You might ask yourself. Well, I'm hopefully going to provide you with some answers regarding this. Because yeah, the only argument for using animals then would be that animal testing generates much more benefits to humans than the costs to animals, but this is not the case. Animal testing is actually really bad science. And this is because, yeah, animals don't get the typical diseases that we have. If you think about it, 95 to 98% of the human diseases are linked to lifestyle factors, smoking, other bad habits, eating foods that are not good for us, being lethargic, stress, depression. These are symptoms that are typically not observed as such in animals, and yet we try to use them as a model for our diseases that they often don't even get. So this is where we have a really big problem already. And therefore also when it comes to animal testing, researchers tend to use what I refer to as a double standard. I will lay this out to you. So on the one hand, you have, if you ask animal experimenters why they experiment on animals, their answer will be, well, because animals are like us. So that's a significant scientific explanation in favor of animal testing. We don't want to test on humans because it's morally wrong. So what's the next best option? Animals. And then if you ask them, well, why is it then morally okay to experiment on animals? Then they will say, well, animals are not like us. So animals are often treated like as if they were machines, tools, just to get answers out that can apply to us. And that's then the ethical explanation in favor of animal testing. They don't feel the same pain as we do. Let's take this double standard to trial then. Are animals really that different from us? Well, it goes back to Jeremy Bentham. This is a quote that's being used a lot, and you've probably come across it or heard it already today, or you will still hear it. Jeremy Bentham said, "The question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? Why should the law refuse its protection to any sensitive being?" So what Jeremy Bentham refers to, it doesn't really matter how intelligent they are, or we think we're so much more sophisticated. It all comes down to the fact any individual that is suffering should not be exposed to an experiment inflicted upon something that they haven't given their permission to. And actually, science also confirms that some animals that we previously thought are not capable of suffering as much as we do, actually do so. For example, fish, it's long been believed that they might not even feel pain, but a recent study confirms that they most likely feel just as much pain as we do. So if you think about what horrific treatments we put fish under when they're being fished, suffocated alive, all these things happening to animals, it just shows that when it comes down to suffering, we're all the same, we all suffer. So that refutes the first argument, actually, when you look at it again. Is it morally okay to experiment on animals? Yes, because they're not like us. That ethical explanation in favor of animal testing doesn't hold true, because animals feel fear, pain, stress, just like us. But unlike humans, they cannot give their permission. So it's always morally wrong to conduct experiments on animals. So here is where I think any animal rights activist would agree with me. We should draw the line that animal testing is just not allowed, just shouldn't happen. The other argumentation that's then being used, if you think about it being a necessary evil, well, we use animals because they're the next best thing next to humans that we have to use. They're enough like us, or they're just like us. And that's then the scientific explanation. Scientists will often say we share so many genes with different animals. For example, 95% with chimps, 92% with mice. We even share 50% of our genes with bananas, by the way. So just think about that, how relevant a banana would be for a human experiment. But then when we dig a bit deeper and we compare different humans to one another, despite the fact that we share almost all our genes with one another, we all behave very differently. We look different from one another as well. And even twins, identical twins who share 99.99999% of their genes, they still can develop different diseases or respond differently to treatments. So this just makes you think, how are animals just like us? If one human differs from another human, there's just too big a difference to use different animal species for another animal species as a model. So yeah, like I said, I think I've already mentioned it, that animals suffer from different diseases. If you, for example, HIV in humans is a different virus to the SIV virus in monkeys. And even when animals can get the same disease as we do, for instance, diabetes, the way that the disease progresses, or which type of cells are involved, or that become inhibited or that die, can be different. So you can draw really false conclusions from an animal test compared to a human test. And for a lot of other diseases, we don't even know if animals can get it. For example, Alzheimer's or Corona now. We know that the normal lab mouse cannot get infected by Corona. So now we're testing on monkeys, hamsters, pigs, you name it, and genetically modifying animals so that they can become sick in the first place. And I just want to let you know about this as well. For example, mice and rats, people sometimes cannot distinguish them easily, but in 60% of the times that same toxicant is tested on a mouse or on a rat, you get a different response. That just gives you an idea that if mice cannot predict what happens in a rat and vice versa, how should they be able to predict what happens in a human? So the fact that animal testers say that we can use animals to predict human responses because they're just like us, we can really refute that hypothesis. Animal testing is not relevant for people because animals are different from humans and each other. And that's the best scientific argument that you can use against animal testing. We are just not 70-kilogram mice or rats. And therefore I think we can actually really make a very bold claim. Animal testing is not a necessary evil, but it's a lost cause. And it's therefore time to abandon the gold standard of animal testing, because animal research is not relevant to people. Animals and humans suffer from different diseases. For example, now animal testing has been steadily, well, decreasing somewhat, but what has been increasing when it comes to animal testing is the amount of animals that are being used for genetic modification. Why genetic modification? Well, there's also an easy explanation for that. Scientists are realizing that animals are not good models for human beings. So what do? They try and tweak their genomes, their DNA, to resemble a bit more that of a human being. So they've been using genetically modified animals for all different types of diseases. Those are all the different types of, well, there's more than that as well, but for different cognitive disorders, organ transplantation, cancers, they're modifying these animals, but still even that doesn't work. You just cannot turn a mouse or a monkey into a human. So all these are failures. It seems like it's the last resort to try and use animals instead of realizing that it's a lost cause. So what we're going to do now, or what I'm going to highlight for you, is to discredit the 3 biggest myths of animal testing. And I think these 3 myths all come down to 3 aspects. That scientists ignore the fact that mice are not humans. That's where it starts going wrong. Then they ask the wrong questions. They try to cure mice while it's humans that we want to cure. And of course, what's going to happen? They're going to draw the wrong conclusions. So the 3 myths I'm going to talk about next is, but we can't just test on humans now, can we? And how should we possibly understand diseases without animal testing? And using a complex, an entire living animal must be better than using cells or a computer model, right? Well, surely we can't test on humans. Just also as a reminder, maybe you've heard about it before, 97% of all drugs that are successful in animal trials, so that's past that barrier, actually fail in humans, again, because animals are not humans. And of the ones that pass and that come to market, 8% are later withdrawn due to side effects, because humans behave differently, again, one from another, or react differently. And we can't test on humans, they say. Well, actually, every time you're prescribed a new medicine that you've not taken before, you are actually an animal experiment or a human experiment. Because the first time you try it, you don't know what's going to happen. There is a chance it might not have an effect on you, or that it doesn't cause any harm. And the same thing actually happens at an earlier stage too in drug development, what is called clinical trials. After its potential drug is tested on animals, there's always going to be a first human that is being exposed to this potential drug or treatment. And personally, I would rather animal-free methods, cell-based, computer-based, you name it, being happened beforehand, before it's been tested on a human, than an animal, because animals do not predict responses observed in humans. Proof to that, if you look on the right-hand side, aspirin, a drug that we've been using safely, more or less safely, for decades. If aspirin hadn't existed yet, it would never come to the market. And this is because it is toxic to animals. These are a lot of different numbers in the middle there. You don't have to look at them all. But it basically just means the way now animal testing is conducted, there's a lot of boxes that need to be ticked. And there would be a lot of boxes that could not be ticked, which would mean that aspirin would not come to the market, and we would not be able to soothe our headaches that way. And then on the other hand, you have the opposite that happens. A drug that's safe in animals might be horrible, or might have horrible effects in humans. This happened with thalidomide, which was prescribed to pregnant women who had difficulties sleeping. No issues whatsoever with mice, and pregnant mice also, no problems, no malformations. These are images of human babies born. So you can see safe in animals, not safe at all in humans. This is also just to show what do we actually gain from doing all these animal experiments. And also something that people don't know a lot of the time is that we always collect data prior via computers, via cell cultures, to see if something is potentially toxic or not. And this prior data is then being verified by animal testing before it comes to humans. Cruelty Free International, another animal rights organization, did a really big analysis on this. And they actually found that dog experiments actually only provide 2% more useful information than we already know. And when it comes to monkey tests, it's 0.4%, which is irrelevant. We could just cut out all this animal testing and we could still produce safe products and safe chemicals. And then how can we understand diseases without animal testing? Well, animals suffer from different diseases. I mentioned that before. And actually, there's a very interesting paper which says that everything we know about HIV and AIDS has been discovered without relying on animal models. I invite you to read this, which is really interesting because it fits very well with what's happening now with corona research. We've been trying for so long to develop an HIV vaccine. How far have we gotten? And also, animals get different forms of the disease. So you can again see that it's so far apart that the likelihood of finding a cure is very, very difficult. The quote next to it is also a really strong one. We have cured mice of cancer for decades, and it simply didn't work in humans. It's like researchers are forgetting that they don't want to cure the mouse, but the human. Surely a living animal is better than a computer model or simulation. You might think so, but actually with the growing sophistication of computers, the ability to model in silico, which means computer modeling, or to replicate by means of simulation aspects of the human or other animal bodies is ever more possible. Computer models have actually been used to model different functions of different organs and tissues. There's actually a computer model that can predict the heart toxicity of potential drugs better than testing that has happened on drugs. There was a clinical trial where humans developed heart attacks based from a new drug, where it was safe in dogs, but the computer model could actually predict that it wouldn't have been safe, so it could have saved human lives. And then we also have alternatives in terms of simulators. There's the TraumaMan simulator, which is really useful for medical students to develop techniques. And then the same can also be applied for veterinary medicine, where unfortunately at this day, still a lot of animals actually get used and killed just so students can practice their training. And one example here, you can see Jerry from Interniche. I think Nick Jukes is giving a presentation right after me, who's the founder of Interniche. And these are really nice examples to show that full replacement of animal testing for both training and education purposes is possible in a healing environment where the practice can be gained over and over again on a lifeless object and no animals have to suffer. And the same can be said about sometimes cells in a dish are better than living animals. So in this case, if you ask the right question, you actually don't need animal testing. For cosmetics, rabbits and guinea pigs have been used for decades to see if a potential ingredient of a new makeup or nail polish is toxic to human skin. They've been dripping it in rabbit eyes or shaving guinea pigs. And now they actually have a method that is more performant based on in vitro tests. Those in vitro tests are either based from cultured human skin cells or reconstituted skin cells or artificial human skin cells. And the crude skin allergy test in guinea pigs, for example, can only predict 72% of human reactions. So they're 30% of the time they're wrong. While the in vitro, the animal-free science methods are 90% predictive. The Dre's rabbit test, the rabbit eye test, can only predict human skin reactions 60% of the time. The alternative, 86%. So you can again see that the alternative is more accurate. This is an example that I find really shocking when it comes to smoking. Animal testing for smoking has been banned since 2011. But the effects are still being researched in animals. So animals are being exposed to smoke-like scenarios. While in fact they don't smoke. Even animals are obligate nose breathers. That means that they cannot take a drag from a cigarette like a human would. You can ask yourself, why do we actually have to expose animals to these horrible tests while we have billions of natural human cases? Plus the human population, it's actually human population studies that led to the discovery that smoking causes cancer. Smoking doesn't really cause cancer in mice and rats. even there's a really nice alternative and much more promising without animal testing. It's called the smoking human lung on a chip. It's a very sophisticated tool. An organ on a chip is actually a fancy in vitro, so a dish model with cells where they can culture different organs. They can link them with a blood supply. And in this case, in this example, they connected this chip where they can culture lung cells on a chip with other different body organ cells. And they have a contraption which actually smokes actively cigarettes, and then they can see the effects of smoking, plus afterwards add on the effects of a potential treatment, which much more mimics closely what happens to a smoking human. So yeah, now that you've seen all these things, I hope I've convinced you a little bit that animal-free science is the future in human medicine. I've mentioned it already before, how humans already differ how they react or respond to drugs or treatments or stressors. Here's an interesting quote as well. The vast majority of drugs, more than 90%, only work in 30 or 50% of people. And a leading cause of death in the US and in Europe, it won't be any different, is actually prescription drugs, because they don't work in people. Sometimes people also accidentally overdose, of course, but everyone responds differently. Sometimes someone responds well, someone is more sensitive to another. So the future is what's called personalized medicine. I'm just going to lay it out in simple terms. So the pluripotent stem cell technology. This is a new technology that you could literally harvest skin cells from your hand, and you can turn them into any different type of body cell. You can turn them into brain cells, heart cells, lung cells, blood cells, any type of your body cells. And then these cells can be cultured on one of these organs on a chip with different organs. So you could have your brain on a chip together with your heart on a chip, your liver on a chip. And then when you go to your doctor, they can then, and you're sick, they can check which medicine should they best prescribe for your condition. And then you get really personalized treatment, and there's no animal testing anymore necessary. So this together, and this involves computer technology, this involves cell technology. This really is the future where we're heading to, and where we can actually provide treatments for humans without animal testing. So in conclusion, the seeming problem was that there's a battle between ethics and science. But I think this is mainly due to the lack of knowledge and understanding and habit, actually. Scientists have been doing animal testing for so long that they just got stuck in a habit. But because of the new advancements, the new technology, we can really say that animal testing has never been as wrong as it is today. We can do so much better, and we really have to. The solution is actually that we have to marry ethics and science again together. If we start off by doing what's ethically right, the options we have are good science. You might ask yourself, do we have alternatives for everything? And my honest answer is going to be no, we don't have already alternatives for everything. But we have to abandon the animal model because it's simply not working. So if we free time, lives, space, and money after we drop something that's not working, we actually have time to invest it in real and good science. And when it comes to studying the human animal, there's only one right model, and that's the human itself, Homo sapiens. So rejecting animal testing and replacing the research with human relevant science is the only option, if you ask me. And with this, I want to thank you. I just want to mention as well a really interesting book as well called Animal Experimentation, Working Towards a Paradigm Change. I recommend it to everyone. It's like a textbook. If you want to know more about animal testing, you find it all in there. And it's also very new, so it's all up to date in terms of science and research. And I hope you found it interesting, and I'm happy to answer some questions if I still have some time. Thank you very much.
Hi, that was so great. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's some questions that popped up in, so I'm just going to read them out to you. We still have quite some minutes left. So first question is, what argument would you use or choose if someone asks you to explain why animal testing would not be effective in science, since vegans always say that we are all the same, but just a little bit different with feathers, fur, or wings instead of arms, etc.?
Well, actually, what I highlighted at the beginning kind of sums it up, that you cannot say we're different or we're the same. We're different and the same. We're the same when it comes to what we feel. We're all animals capable of feeling pain. So therefore, we should all care for one another. But we are adapted to different environments. That's why evolution comes in. Different humans are adapted to different environments as well and will respond differently. So we have to really look at an individual level there when it comes to finding treatment and the best thing that works for someone. So it's looking at it both ways. We are ethically, or as animals, we feel pain, but scientifically we behave differently because we are in different environments and we've adapted differently. So evolution is the answer, actually.
Great. So next question is, what do you think is the best way to confront the scientific community that animal testing does not follow basic scientific rules?
That's also a good question. Well, facts, of course, although facts is a difficult one because when it comes to publications in science, generally only positive results are published. So we will often not come across results where scientists admit, oh, the animal test didn't work. It's just not published. But we can then show them when an animal test does not lead to a new medicine. We can show them that, but also in science, actually, there's a rule that 95% of the cases, you should be right. You should only be wrong 50% of the time. Sorry, 5%. You allow for 5% error. But when it comes to animal testing, I mentioned that 97% of the times that an animal experiment works in an animal, it will not work in humans. So it's against general science, where we only accept to be wrong 5 times. You'd actually be better off flipping a coin, which is 50%, than doing an animal experiment to see if something works or not.
That's bananas.
It is.
Next question is, I have never heard about alternatives for vaccines. How would immunization tests work directly in humans?
Well, there is actually a lot of research going on in that as well, because of course, yeah, vaccines is an area where they're still using residues from animals. And I invite everyone, I think it's Cruelty Free Europe, that are giving a webinar on this subject as well. But when it comes to vaccines for humans, there's a lot of development already, also showing that it's better because this can be done artificially. You can, it's called in chemical, which is chemically, they can reconstruct how something fits. So what you want to do with a vaccine, you want to fit on the virus so that matches the molecule, let's put it that way. You can recreate that in the lab artificially, no animals involved. And they're actually potentially better than vaccines. Why? Because they're always the same, because it's artificially made, it's identical each time. While a batch vaccine, every batch is different because they're a natural source. That's why batches have to be tested again on animals. It's really just, we have the technology, it can be done, but the law is in the way because a lot of things still have to be tested on animals and habit. It's not that we can't do it, it's that, yeah, we're just not doing it.
Okay, next one is 2 questions, but they come together. So can organs on a chip be used for multiple experiments? And is the presumably high cost price what's stopping most labs from switching to organs on a chip? Or is it also because they're going conservative and resistant to change?
Okay, very good questions. So you can indeed combine several organs on a chip. Right now, you can combine, I think, up to 10. So initially, the idea was to have a whole body on a chip. And maybe one day we can do this, but it's controlling a lot of parameters and it's not yet 100% possible. But you don't always have to know everything of the human body to have your results. And yes, it can be reused, the chip as well. And so you can culture different cells. And yes, it's quite costly. But in the long run, it could actually, it's an investment that could save money. If labs are equipped with it, it can be done really routine-wise. So in the long run, it can save money. But again, there's a big issue with investing in innovations because pharmaceutical companies are actually already using this technology. But the problem there is that even if they know that often it works better, but the law is in the way again. So if any pharmaceutical that should be marketed or they want to market has to be tested on animals. Until we change the law, that's more than 60 years old, they're forced to, even if they can show that it's not necessary and that it's bad. So this is really where we have to lobby and where we have to organize protests to make sure that the laws are changed.
Great call to action.
Yes.
So next one again is, do you know about the organization or website Speaking of Research? They're heavily pro-animal testing, but rely on science and research opinions. What do you think is their motivation for promoting these methods?
Very good question. And I actually used a graphic in the beginning of my presentation about the survey, whether people are okay with animals being used for animal tests or not. So yeah, they're a group of scientists who conduct animal experiments. And well, yeah, I'm providing the contra arguments now. They will be providing the pro arguments, because of course they're defending what they're doing. And I think it's a little bit like we have it in the vegan, when it comes to meat eating, it's cognitive dissonance. They probably already know that they're wrong and they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, but they cannot admit this to themselves if they want to keep testing on animals. So they have to prove their point that it's normal, that it's all right, that it's okay to do so. So this is why they're providing the other arguments. And on those websites as well, they will list a lot of diseases where we found cures or treatments, or where we've developed only because of animal testing. So that's their main argument, to say we need animal testing. But yeah, that's a small portion of the story. A lot of these cases, those results, it's true, but we didn't have any alternatives. So maybe you could argue it's better than nothing. It's not my point of view that it's better than nothing. We still shouldn't have done it, but that's the only thing that was available, and it misled us a lot of the time. When it comes to AIDS, for example, the first treatments that they found weren't as good as the ones they found after they studied humans. And also insulin, we've got it a little bit wrong with insulin before we really developed it better based on human studies again. So it of course depends on how complete the story they want to tell, and they're selling the case of pro-animal testing, of course.
All right, last question for this session is, do you know what is going on now in researching a corona vaccine? What does it mean for the effectiveness of such a vaccine if it is tested fast on animals, which you say does not work most of the time?
Well, corona is really a big mess when it comes to animal testing now, because you can see on the one side, they're rushing things. So again, it's like, we've always been testing on animals for safety and to be sure it works, but apparently now we can skip these steps. So that also shows that maybe it's not necessary, so we don't need to tick these boxes. And also, and it's happened before, and it's constantly happening. Maybe there was already a cure for corona, but we threw it in the bin, literally, because it didn't work in a hamster, in a rabbit, or in a dog. This is happening all the time. We just can't put our fingers on it how often, because it works both ways. If something that works in an animal is harmful to the human and harmful to an animal, if it always has to be the animal first, we throw the cure for corona. Maybe we could stop wearing masks and be in conferences together in real life if we wouldn't do animal testing. I think corona, I didn't want to talk too much about it, but it's a prime example that animal scientists are now using it to prove, see, we need a vaccine for corona. Animal testing is necessary. Where is the vaccine? We've also been looking for a vaccine for AIDS for 30 years. Where is it? I don't want to be grim and say that there won't be one, but not if we're focusing it on animals. There is also research, and luckily it's also being funded by the government. There's a lot of alternatives being funded currently, and they're also happening. So it's not that we have to rely on animal testing to get a vaccine or a treatment for corona. We can do it without, based on animal-free science.
Isn't that a nice ending phrase? Thank you so much, Jen. There's some more questions. You can go into the Q&A section and try to chat some more with your listeners. And we will have, yeah, sorry. Thank you so much again. And yeah, well, I hope you have a great day. And all of you, the next talk is coming up in 5 minutes, so stay tuned. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.